Tonight, the Nolan Wells investigation into the death of a shining star, Nolan Wells, has an altercation witness emerged. A witness that claims she saw an altercation at Horn Island. Good evening. I'm Nancy Grace. This is Crime Stories. I want to thank you for being with us. A Nolan Wells phone evidence torpedo.
Two confirmed witnesses that saw Nolan Wells on the island around 6 p.m. The Triton, as you said, left around 4:30.
What witnesses? Where? Who, what, where, why, and when?
I have not spoken publicly about this before, but I witnessed an altercation involving Nolan Wells from a boat nearby. What I saw has stayed with me, and I believe it's important information. I have provided or intend to provide my account to the appropriate investigators because Nolan's family deserves the truth. Out of respect for the ongoing investigation, I won't speculate beyond what I personally observed. While I was on the boat near the area, I witnessed an altercation involving Nolan Wells and several other individuals. I saw what appeared to be an argument that escalated after there was a dispute involving Nolan's phone. I heard Nolan yelling for his phone to be returned. The argument continued after the group reached shore, and I observed a physical fight involving Nolan and multiple people. I also observed a young woman telling them to stop. At that point, I left the area because the situation had appeared to be getting worse. I did not remain long enough to witness what happened afterward. Everything beyond what I personally observed would be speculation, so I cannot honestly say what occurred after I left. Then she said she messaged one of the individuals that she saw, "Hey, I just want to say I was a passenger on another boat and I saw the argument between you guys and we'll go to the police with this information. I also have video footage. My husband doesn't show much, but it shows the argument that was taken and how you guys were upset at Nolan because of the young lady."
That from Secret Service Sam on TikTok. Okay. How is this helping the investigation? I'm trying to make sense of so many people online making comments. Now, if this is true, if there is a witness who has a husband with her on the boat and they took a certain amount of video, it could change everything, especially if the video is time stamped. Straight out to veteran trial lawyer, defense attorney Philip Dubay joining me. He's joining us out of LA, formerly in the public defender's office. They try a ton of cases. Philip, first of all, has she turned it into police? She said she was. If she hasn't, I give her no credibility at all. Look, I want this to be true. Why? Because I want the video. I want to see the timestamp on the video. I want to see, was he still on Horn Island at 4:30 when his acquaintances on the Triton boat left? I want that video. And if she hasn't brought this forward to LE, law enforcement, then it means nothing to me. I mean, if I know a young man turns up dead in the water, and I know there's a controversy surrounding this, I mean, we know she knows that because she's gone online and posted it, then why not hand it over to police?
Agreed. And it should go to the grand jury for part of their investigation. But I got to tell you, if I were cross-examining her, should this even go to trial, the first question I'd ask her on that 4th of July, what she had been drinking. Before that video got activated, everybody would want to
put him up.
Drinking and smoking. You know how many people were partying?
Okay, man. Have you lost your mind? You defend criminal cases. I bet everybody you put on the stand has either been high, drunk, or worse during the altercation. Well, every witness is not a nun, a priest, or a virgin. Everybody on Horn Island was drinking, man. What are you talking about? I don't care if she took a drink. I want the video.
You want the truth is what you want. You want the truth. And let's
and that would be the video. Yeah.
Remember, Nancy.
Okay.
Not consistent.
Brandon Tatum is joining us. So after all that, all you have to say is, was she drinking? That's your takeaway from that? Joining me is Brandon Tatum, former police officer, Tucson, now star of The Officer Tatum on YouTube, who famously has interviewed the acquaintances who all say they had nothing to do with it. Let's just put that out there. He's interviewed them extensively. I want to talk about not what you want to talk about, Brandon Tatum, which is they had nothing to do with this, because I met them and I believe them. So noted. Can we talk about a potential witness to an altercation? And she seems to suggest it was over Katie. Why? Don't know what the altercation was. Maybe it was, hey, leave her alone and get on the boat, or leave her alone, she's my girlfriend, or it could be anything. But if there is a witness placing Nolan seemingly in the water, I can't tell that, but having an argument with another person, a partier at Horn Island, that is significant. It could prove or disprove your friend's timeline.
Well, Nancy, I think that it's a big obstacle to climb here because I've never heard of this altercation whatsoever. Nobody that I've talked to have alluded that this altercation was real. And also Katie, whom I saw her text messages, she didn't even say this altercation occurred. What I will say is that if I was an investigator in this investigation, I want to hear that. I want to be able to compare that information to other things that we may have or other witness statements. But I don't think it's significant because it doesn't show if Nolan Wells was actually killed in that altercation. She's claiming that there was an altercation between him arguing with somebody else. There was a potential fight, but that doesn't get me to how did he drown? How did he get in the water? And how did he not recover and come home to his family? So I would take that into consideration. I would compare that to the other interviews that I've done, but I don't think it's significant whatsoever. However, I would be incredibly skeptical because there's no other statements that I've heard from anybody that comes even close to an altercation with Nolan Wells and others over a girl.
Number one, he's dead shortly after an alleged altercation with another male. We think over a woman. See, in my world, I put together both circumstantial and direct evidence. Direct evidence would be, for instance, DNA or a fingerprint. Circumstantial evidence is the timing of the alleged altercation and his death. Right?
Nancy,
so it's hard for me to believe that there's some kind of altercation on Horn Island just before he dies. And they were not connected. That's hard for me to believe that.
Well, Nancy, she's not saying he lost the fight. She's not saying that he got beat up. If you look at the autopsy, there's no clear signs of blunt force trauma to his face or any of the vital areas that could kill him. So it doesn't appear that there's any indication that he lost a fight, that there was enough trauma in this particular fight that would lead to his death. And when you look at the autopsy, there is no blunt force trauma to his face. There is no lacerations or damages to the back of his head. This is redness that was underneath the skin.
Oh, wait, are you looking at the screen? Because I'm looking at a big red mark on the back of his head.
Yeah, but this is underneath the skin. This is not a big red gash that's in the back of his head, which would be consistent with blunt force trauma. This is something that occurred underneath the skin that could have been from pooling of blood after his death due to,
Okay, I need to explain something.
I'll let the experts talk about specifics, but it doesn't appear that.
Okay, let's do that. But I want everyone to understand why Officer Tatum is here. Officer Tatum and Philip Dubé and others on our panel tonight are taking a particular side, right? It's called cross-examination, and it is similar to what happens in court. A theory emerges, a line of questioning emerges, and the other side tests it with fire under cross-examination. And then, hopefully, you get to the truth. Right now, we're talking about an alleged eyewitness to an altercation just before Nolan Wells is dead. If she has not handed this over to the police, it doesn't mean a hill of beans to me. But Tatum has a good idea, and that is, let's let an expert discuss it. To Joseph Scott Morgan, death investigator, professor of forensics, Jacksonville State University. You can see him now on a hit podcast. It's on YouTube, body bags with Joseph Scott Morgan. Joe Scott, if there had been not a blunt force trauma that Officer Tatum is describing, but a fist fight, if there had been a fist fight, plus body in water for multiple days, body decomposition, would you expect to see red marks on the hands at that juncture, on the face? What would you expect if there had been a fisticuffs?
Yeah, you would see, well, first off, above discolored areas, like consistent with contusions. If there are facial strikes or just body blows, you can actually see abraded areas over the surface of his fingers, and these are very subtle sometimes. And if there is decomposition, which we believe there is, particularly per the second autopsy that was performed, he didn't make note of this. And can I go one more step with this? And this is kind of graphic, but people need to understand this. This physician that did the second autopsy actually did what's referred to as a coronal sectioning of the face. So there were multiple incisions made into Nolan's face in this autopsy, this second autopsy. And this guy didn't see anything. He didn't see anything that was of import relative or indicative of blunt force trauma. And I would think that if there was contact, particularly if he's fighting a group of people, these sorts of things, you're going to have injuries probably on the leading edges, or what we refer to as the blade of the arm, right here on the forearm, the back of the hands, the knuckles, those points of contact. And certainly if there's facial strikes going on with him, which we find with blunt force trauma many times with fisticuffs, as you say, you'll see these strikes, you'll see marks on the face. There's nothing to indicate that in the second autopsy. Now, what the state has, I don't know, but I do know this. I know they're saying they're done with the autopsy and that it's complete, which means the gross findings in the autopsy room, the tox, the histology, that means that autopsy report is complete. They just hadn't released their findings yet.
And speaking of that, Joe Scott Morgan, I've heard the same, that the autopsy is complete.
Yeah.
There are reports that there is no cocaine in Nolan's system. That's uncorroborated reports,
Okay.
but a good source. No cocaine in the system.
Yep.
Joe Scott, when the body has been in the elements, such as the water, for that long, how can I confirm if he had been drinking or not?
Oh, you can still pull a BA, blood alcohol, or blood ethanol level, as it's referred to. And again, Nancy, we're not talking about someone that has been down for weeks and weeks. We can still do the BA, and it can come from urine, blood. We can still draw urine and find it pretty effectively. You'll have what's referred to as qualitative. We've talked about this before, and I know you understand that, but so our friends understand. You have a qualitative amount, which they say, yes, it is present. And then you have a quantitative amount where they do the measurement of the BAC, the blood alcohol content. Just think about DWI, DUI, wherever you're from, those levels. And then we get up to those lethal levels. That's really what I'm interested in relative. And yeah, I'm interested in any of the other toxicological findings you might have relative to anything illicit or illicit drugs, but particularly with alcohol, because that has been kind of this thing that has been said over and over and over again. Well, let me see it. I want to know what the blood alcohol level was like. And historically, I would like to know what his level of experience has been with alcohol. As you well know, because of cases you've worked on in the past, Nancy, if you're a lightweight, if you've never had anything to drink and you start taking on copious amounts of alcohol, and you're kind of a neophyte in this area, it can have very, very lethal outcomes.
Let me understand. Joe Scott Morgan joining us, star of Body Bags with Joseph Scott Morgan on YouTube and Death Investigator. When I'm asking you, even if the body has been in the elements for a period of days, can I still get a blood alcohol? Maybe not from urine, but you certainly can't do a blow test. But can you take human tissue from one of the organs and extract a blood alcohol from human tissue?
It'd be very difficult. Generally, the liver is the best candidate. We'll spin that down. We'll take a section of it, spin it down, and liquefy it. But again, I submit to you, Nancy, that he has not been down long enough to compromise the ability to get at least
Get
a
a
quantitative amount. Yeah, to get a BA.
Okay. To Philip Dubé joining me, a veteran trial lawyer, defense attorney out of the LA jurisdiction. I'm not quite sure why you're so focused on who had been drinking. Let's take a look at the video. Let me answer that for you. Everybody was drinking. Okay, everybody had a snootful. So, even someone drinking can see an altercation, Dubé.
No, of course you can. I can see that crowd of people out there. It was a bustling, hot 4th of July afternoon. But who's to say that the people that she saw included Nolan Wells? And that's why you got to get into her ability to perceive and recollect being impacted by intoxicants such as alcohol. I would want to know if she had imbibed. I really would. Not to mention, the autopsy findings thus far do not reflect any type of physical insults or injury to his body. At most, what you have
I'm
are
asking
signs.
you about your fixation on the witness having been drinking. Joe Scott Morgan has already addressed the body. I'm talking to you about the alleged witness.
Yeah. If she had in fact been drinking, I do believe, unless they really have a video showing him in HD quality, showing that he was in a fight, then I would call her ability to perceive, recollect, and even state that there was an altercation going on in her presence.
You know, Brandon Tatum joining us, Officer Tatum on YouTube. I've cross-examined a lot of witnesses, and I cross-examined them exactly on that. How far away were you? Did you know the target? Were you familiar with them? Was your vision obstructed by anything? Were you wearing glasses? Were you wearing sunglasses? What time of the day? I mean, I could go on and on and on. But unless you have a nun, a priest, or a virgin on the stand, or maybe Angel Gabriel might come down and testify, you have to take your witness as you find them. And I'm sure you've had a lot of drunk witnesses in Tucson, to everything from a bar fight to a murder to a dope deal. Look, I'd say a good 50% of witnesses were drunk at one time or the other. That doesn't mean they didn't see what they saw.
Well, from a law enforcement perspective, this is not cross-examination on the stand. This is us. What I would deal with a witness is right on the scene, and I'm not too concerned of whether the person is drunk or not. I'm not going to test their blood alcohol level on the scene. I want to know specifically, what did you see? What are the identifying markers that you have to say that this is Nolan? If that person can describe them, maybe we'll do a show up. If we have like a video or a picture or something, we can show them and say, hey, does this match the person you think that was here? Then we'll have a good perspective. But there is a challenge here, because you do have to identify him. You can't just say it was a black man out there with curly hair and I think it was Nolan. You're going to have some clear identifying markers that this is Nolan, and then you have to identify the people he was fighting with and the girl. And I think this person is going to have a big challenge. I saw this text message. We reached out to the girl on her social media. She never responded to us. I don't know if she ever really sent it in to the police, but it is problematic, in my opinion, if she hasn't. If you're going to say somebody is going to spend time in jail, or you are alluding to the fact they've committed a crime, and the fact now that we know that Nolan did not survive being out there at Horn Island, and you never submitted that to law enforcement, there's a potential that's tampering with evidence. If you have evidence of a crime and you're withholding that from law enforcement, and you knowingly and intentionally are doing that, that could be very problematic for a person who claimed to be a witness.
No. Morally, it's wrong, but there is no duty under the law that you have to report yourself as a witness, that you have to volunteer information. You can stand on the side of a pool and watch somebody drown and do nothing unless you have a fiduciary capacity, and it's not a crime in our jurisprudence. So nothing is compelling her under the law to come forward. However, interesting, she did post it. She did identify herself. She did say she was going to police, and that would be my first line of cross. Did you take this to the police? And if she said no, all HELL
Well,
break out in that courtroom. If you have information like this and you don't go to the police, no,
Nancy,
no,
she's
would fly. Fur would fly. You ever seen a dog fight? That's what I mean by that. Fur would fly. So that would be a line of cross-exam. Hold on, something else. Before I go out to Susan Hendricks, Jeff Shetler, and Ben Dobrin, now information that there is, in fact, a criminal investigation.
Hearing that somebody who has an inside source is saying the DA's office in Mississippi is now looking at the Nolan Wells case as a criminal investigation and no longer an accidental drowning. Now, we can only pray that this is true. Obviously, we can't celebrate. We can't get excited at all because I have not seen Ben Crump announce this. It is not being reported by any other major media sources, but there are rumblings.
From Sam Crouppen. All right. I would like to point out that his source is a, quote, little birdie. Little birdies are saying that an inside source says the DA's office is now looking into the Nolan Wells as a criminal investigation. I can't put that up on the stand. Susan Hendricks joining me, investigative journalist and author of Down the Hill, My Descent into the Double Murder in Delphi. Susan, you get laughed out of court if your witness said a little birdie told me. Number one, that's hearsay, but a little birdie?
Yeah, exactly. It makes me wonder, did that woman, those text messages about some sort of altercation, is the grand jury analyzing this as we speak? Because finally the DA came out and said, look, I can't release anything that's going on, but let it be clear, and I'm paraphrasing, that we are investigating this with a grand jury.
Susan Hendricks, you're absolutely right. She states most recently, this is the elected district attorney, my obligation and commitment is to present the grand jury with all the evidence collected in the case in order for them to reach a decision based on a thorough investigation, complete evidence presentation, the actual truth, and an understanding of the law. I'm obligated to do so in keeping with the law and the rules of the court. She goes on to state, I stand firmly on the rule of law and my ethical obligation. That is what the people of Jackson County elected me to do. I will present the grand jury with a thorough, complete, and fair investigation into the death of Nolan Wells. Now, is there a criminal investigation? According to some sources, there is. We keep hearing there is no criminal investigation. To Dave Mack, Crime Stories investigative reporter, what is the truth of it tonight?
Nancy, it hasn't been announced that there's a criminal investigation, but it just stands to reason that they are doing a full investigation into the death of Nolan Wells. At this point, we don't have a cause of death, Nancy. They have not released the reports on the autopsy that was done by the state, completed weeks ago. We don't know anything. Nothing's been released. So whether they're doing a criminal investigation or not, I think it stands to reason they are investigating to every piece of evidence they can find to determine what happened and what they can present, they being investigators, to the grand jury.
Hi guys, Nancy Grace here. If you are a homeowner, you've probably thought, should I call American Financing to refinance and pay off this debt? But you don't because of your low mortgage rate. That low rate, it's not saving you if you're drowning in credit card interest. People are calling American Financing, and American Financing is saving customers an average of $800. That's not in all, that's a month, by using their equity to pay off the credit card debt. using their home equity to pay off credit card debt. No upfront fees. It costs you nothing to find out what you could be saving. And if you start today, you may be able to delay 2 mortgage payments. American Financing, 866-888-0344. Repeat, 866-888-0344. Or just go online to americanfinancing.net/Nancy. Disclaimer, NMLS 182334, NMLSconsumeraccess.org, APR for rates in the 5S start at 6.327% for well-qualified borrowers. Call 866-888-0344 for details about credit costs and terms. Go to http:// www.americanfinancing.net/Nancy. Average savings are based on borrowers who save over $199.99. And good luck.
I understand the public's urgency to know what happened to Nolan, but we are not taking time for time's sake. We are taking the time required to complete the work this investigation demands. Since Nolan was reported missing, local, state, and federal law enforcement agencies have worked around the clock investigating what happened to him. Every piece of evidence must be examined. Every credible lead must be followed to its conclusion. Every witness interview must be analyzed in context of all other evidence. The pressure for answers does not change what the work requires. Our responsibility to Nolan and our community is to complete this investigation thoroughly, carefully, without compromise, supported by the evidence and worthy of the confidence of the people we serve. I also understand that many people have questions about why more information has not been released publicly. In Mississippi, the rules of professional conduct restrict the information a prosecutor can release during an investigation. Our restraint in communicating facts and evidence is not an effort to keep the truth from the public. It is an effort to protect the integrity of this investigation and the grand jury proceeding.
And tonight, more rumblings that the wrong boat was searched.
The MDMR report states that the searched vessel was called a Tide craft, right? On July 8th. But witnesses show he used a Tide line boat on July 4th. In the MDMR report, right down at the bottom in the yellow, it says Tide craft, not Tide line.
From Sam Crouppen to Ben Dobrin, emergency response diving instructor and trainer. Ben, thank you for being with us. What about the mistake in the name of the boat, if it was in fact a mistake? And could that explain any problem in getting GPS information?
Well, absolutely, because they're two different brands of boats. It's like saying, I'm going to search a Ford, and then you go out and search a Chevrolet in a car. They're very different brands of boats. And so if they were searching the wrong boat, then any information on that boat would be the wrong information. So if you're going after the GPS plotter on the Chevrolet, but you want the GPS plotter off of the Ford, they have no bearing. And so if you're searching the incorrect boat, you have incorrect evidence.
To Brandon Tatum, star of The Officer Tatum on YouTube, we just saw some video from your show. And I'm trying to figure out, among other things, what time and day, if you have a time and a date stamp on that, that seemingly shows the Triton with a lot of people on it leaving the island, leaving Horn Island. Do you have a timestamp on that?
I don't have the timestamp. I can ask them to see if they can get it to me. When I watched this video and they presented it to me, this was during the time that the CETO call was occurring. So it had to been right around that time. You could see Wyatt on the boat on the phone. And so this is how it was presented to me. And just to kind of answer your question about the boat searches, you know, it's partially irrelevant depending on the investigation and the interviews that they've done. There is no indication that there was a crime committed on any one of these boats. When you have 60 people that have already given statements to law enforcement, you have the young men that I interviewed that were on their boat that left the island, and then you have people that saw Nolan on the island after they had left. It's no indication that Nolan was on any one of those boats at any point in time and that a murder occurred on those boats. So regardless if they searched them or not, it was offered up for them to use a cadaver dog, but that never occurred. And so I don't really think that the boat situation or search is significant. The boys submitted their Life 360, which is how they got a GPS tracking of when they left the island and how they got from point A to point B, where they docked and all of those things. So all of the information has been concluded, or at least have been explored, and it didn't appear that there is any foul play on any one of the boats.
Okay. Officer Tatum, I respect everything that you just said, but to have a witness tell me it's true because I said so, and because my friends say so, that doesn't mean it's true to me.
This is GPS.
It could be true.
They
And I
provided.
see
They provided Life
GPS. That
360.
doesn't tell me what happened to Nolan. Just because they
No, I'm
got
saying
GPS,
they provided
that
Life
when they
360,
came back.
which is they provided Life 360. They provided the CETO call, and you can put those two things together and say, okay, the timeline matches. And if they left at 4:30, they were already gone. All three boats that came out were already gone when Nolan was last seen. So now you have a timeline that's
Okay,
consistent
right there,
with evidence
right there,
that they presented.
right there. I was going with you until you said the time Nolan was last seen, because their GPS data, I'm sure, is correct, and their Life 360 data, I'm sure, is correct. I'm not arguing with the technology, but what happened just before that? Where was Nolan when they're leaving the island? If you can place him on that island at 5 or 6 o'clock, please do it. And then I will turn attention elsewhere. I'm not trying to hang your friends, the people that you have interviewed. And I respect that you believe them, and maybe you're right. If he can be placed on that island at 5 or 6 o'clock, then they're in the clear. But I want to know who's placing them there, him there, and how.
Reports have come out that there's two reliable witnesses. TMZ reported on this. They said they saw Nolan a little bit before 6 p.m. There was also the young lady, Katie, who sent text messages to one of the boys that I interviewed. I saw the text messages where she alluded to the fact that she did not see Nolan get on the boat. She heard the boys yelling for Nolan to get on the boat. So Nolan never got back on the boat that he came on. So you have the boats leaving. You have a CETO call. You have testimony from everybody on the boat. And all of those things have to be taken in consideration. Also, they have already spoke to law enforcement about this. Them talking to me in the interview is them just telling the world what they told law enforcement. If there was any indication whatsoever that he was on the boat based on the testimony that was given from the boys or anybody else, even this new witness that have come forward, I think that there would be a significant investigation leading to an immediate arrest. But they clearly don't have any clear evidence that there is a crime that is committed, and especially a crime that was committed from the boys that I interviewed. I can't speak for everybody else, but I know the young men that I talked to, they were gone. There's no indication that Nolan was on the boat whatsoever. They're giving statements. Katie gave a statement. Even this person is claiming that they saw Nolan get into a fist fight. It appears that this person is claiming that the fight has happened after Wyatt and the rest of them had left on the boat.
Hi guys, Nancy Grace here. Please join us on Crime Stories and stream it first on Fox 1. When breaking crime news develops, we investigate it and bring it to you. Bombshell updates, answers to unanswered questions from cases making the headlines and cases you may never have heard of until Crime Stories. We go inside investigations with exclusive interviews, crime victims, families seeking justice, investigators, experts, and sources from within the case itself. Stay on top of the nation's biggest trials with us, including gavel-to-gavel coverage with real-time analysis. Crime Stories with Nancy Grace. Stream it first on Fox 1. I hope to see you there, and thank you, friend.
Ben Dobrin joining us, emergency response diving instructor. What do you think regarding the boats, not just the Triton, but the other two boats that traveled with it?
My question is, where did he go in the water? They got him out of the water, obviously, on July 6th. But my question is, where did he go in the water and when did he get into the water? Was it a drowning? Bodies behave differently underwater, whether it's a drowning or it was a killing elsewhere. There's a lot of different variables. The body washed up very close to where he was last seen. There's a lot of current in that area. If it was a drowning, people generally sink when they drown. But if you don't drown and you're put in the water, you're more likely to float. And so there's a lot of variables that come into play of where the body was recovered versus where the body went in, and the timeline also. 2 days, if the body had been in the water for 2 days, that does lead to decomposition. The water temperature is around 85 to 88 degrees. That's very warm water, a lot of bacterial growth. And so a lot of different variables in play of where the body went in, where it came out, and the when. Those are my questions. He's an athletic young man. He's very muscular. Muscles sink in the water, fat floats. And so if he drowned, he was probably going to be on the bottom for a while. And if it was 2 days, that makes sense if he drowned and then washed up very close to where he went in. And so to me, that's a big piece of important information is, if he drowned, he was recovered very close to where he was last seen.
But what does that prove?
If he drowned and he floated, because in warm water it takes 2 to 3 days for your body to decompose and float, it proves that he drowned. Whether it was somebody holding him underwater or him trying to swim somewhere and wasn't a good swimmer, I have no idea. But we haven't gotten the results from the autopsy, and the autopsy is going to tell us a lot. If he drowned, that's an important piece of information. If he did not drown, that's even more important. You have somebody who was found in the water, his body was found in the water and did not drown. That's a very important piece of information. But if he did drown and they found him in the water, that can open up a lot more avenues for investigation at that point.
Philip Dubé joining us, veteran trial lawyer. Philip, we know because the district attorney has said she is presenting information to a grand jury. There are reports it is a criminal investigation. What do you make of the possibility this is a criminal investigation?
I'll tell you exactly what it is. Jackson County, Mississippi is one of the few jurisdictions in the United States that follows the old Sergeant Code. And what that was back in the day was the days of the coroner inquest, where if you had a violent, sudden, or casual death and they couldn't figure out what happened, you would impanel a jury where the medical examiner or the then appointed or elected coroner elicits testimony from people to try to determine manner and cause of death. What Mississippi did is they abrogated that and created this hybrid sort of coroner's inquest with grand jury investigation, where the grand jury will decide whether or not a death occurred and if there was a crime. And based on that, they can complete the death certificate with the cause and manner of death and decide if they're going to return a true bill of indictment against a suspect.
Is it your belief, Philip Dubé, that the grand jury presenter, and I have presented to literally hundreds of grand juries. That's one of the first things we would do in the Fulton County District Attorney's Office. Is it your belief that, to a large degree, it depends on the leaning of the presenter? Does the presenter believe a crime occurred? Or does the presenter want a no bill, in other words, no indictment?
It's twofold. They want to determine, first of all, cause and manner of death and if it's a crime. And so they've sort of combined the roles of the grand jury leader, if you will, or the grand jury DA to help the grand jury make both determinations. So it's my opinion right now, they don't know if they even have a homicide. They don't even know the cause of death, but they've lumped in all the causality to criminality just to get it all in one.
Let me rephrase it, Dubé. Will the grand jury typically do what the presenter wants them to do? I mean, haven't you heard the phrase, the grand jury will indict a ham sandwich if the presenter wants them to?
Sure. Yes,
so
they will.
Yes?
But it is.
Okay, so we'll see what happens with this secret grand jury. You're on cross-examination. Who is our next sponsor? Well, here is a probative clue. Meow. Smalls makes fresh human-grade food designed for cats to thrive, while Big Pet Food uses cheap filler. Smalls features 80% animal protein and zero artificial junk. 88% of cat parents report better digestion, softer fur, and more energy for their cats to play. It's a healthy investment your cat will love. If you want to invest in your cat's health, Smalls is giving you 60% off your cat's first order. 60% off plus free shipping and free treats for life when you go to smalls.com/Nancy, SMALLS, smalls.com/Nancy. 60% off your first order, free shipping, and free treats for life when you head to smalls.com/Nancy. Thanks, Smalls, and thank you from our cat, Cinnamon. Tonight, we are trying to confirm or refute claims that Nolan Wells was alive on Horn Island after 5 or even 6 p.m. If you know or think you know anything regarding that matter, Nolan Wells last seen alive, don't just post it online. Call Jackson County Sheriff's 228-769-3063. Repeat, 228-769-3063. There is a $125,000 reward for information leading to the truth of what happened to Nolan Wells. Was there an altercation? Did it break out into a fistfight just before he is killed? Did he drown? What was the true cause of death?
A young man's body drifts face down in warm Gulf water, submerged for 2 days before the current finally gives him back. Somewhere between a laughing crowd on a holiday beach and the silence of the water, something happened to Nolan Wells, and the people who were there aren't all telling the same story. A phone gets snatched, voices rise. Witnesses now whisper about a fistfight on the sand over a girl. In the last hours, anyone can confirm he was breathing. Boats pulled away from that shore one by one. But did they leave him behind alive, or did they leave him behind already gone? Tonight, a grand jury is quietly deciding whether accident is the wrong word entirely. This is the case of Nolan Wells, a 4th of July celebration that ended in a body in the water, a family demanding answers, and a community divided over who's telling the truth. Before we go further, this case involves themes of death, drowning, and physical violence that some viewers may find disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised. If this is your first time here, hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below letting us know where you're watching from. If you want more cases like this one, don't forget to like and share this video. It helps us keep bringing these stories to light. Now, let's get into what really happened to Nolan Wells. Nolan Xavier Wells was 18 years old. He grew up in Ocean Springs, Mississippi, a coastal town on the Gulf, and in 2025 he graduated from Ocean Springs High School. By the summer of 2026, he was playing wide receiver for Southwest Mississippi Community College, with his sights set on a future in football. Those who knew him describe a young man building a life for himself, one that was still very much ahead of him. He was raised by his mother, Christine Wansley, and his father, Elmore Wansley Sr. Like most parents, they had no reason to think that a summer holiday would become the last time they saw their son alive. On July 4, 2026, Nolan joined a group of friends for an Independence Day trip to Horn Island. Horn Island sits roughly 10 miles off the Mississippi coast, a barrier island that can only be reached by boat. No roads, no bridges, no easy way in or out. For locals, it's a popular 4th of July destination, a place to anchor, swim, and spend the day in the sun with friends. That's exactly what this trip was supposed to be. A group of friends, a boat, and a holiday afternoon on a remote stretch of Gulf coastline. One detail from that day matters. and it's worth stating plainly. Nolan was the only black person in the friend group that gathered on Horn Island that afternoon. It's a fact, not a conclusion, but it's one that would follow this case in the weeks to come. The boat they traveled on was a Triton. At some point that afternoon, it left the island and headed back to the mainland without Nolan on board. Exactly when that boat departed has never been fully settled. Different accounts, different timestamps, different memories of the day. The departure time of that boat would become one of the most contested details in the entire case, and it's a thread we'll come back to. According to the friends who were with him, Nolan chose to stay behind. Their account, given to investigators and later repeated publicly, was that he was last seen in the company of a woman they didn't know, and that he decided to remain on the island rather than leave with the group. Some of those same friends have said the boat itself was taking on water, which they've pointed to as part of the reason they left when they did. That's where the day ends, as far as his friends are concerned. Nolan, still on Horn Island, the boat, heading back without him. Before we go further, if you're new here, this is Crime Chronicles, and this is a case we're following closely, with updates as new evidence comes out, often before it reaches mainstream coverage. If you want to stay ahead of where this investigation goes next, subscribing is the best way to do that. Because what happened next didn't happen quietly, and it didn't happen the way anyone expected. But that's not where the story ends. That's where it starts. Just after midnight on July 5th, Christine Wansley made the call every parent dreads. Her son hadn't come home. Nolan Wells was reported missing. Within hours, the search was underway. The Jackson County Sheriff's Department took the lead on the investigation, with Sheriff John Ledbetter overseeing efforts to locate Nolan. Horn Island is remote, and searching it isn't simple. It's a barrier island with no permanent population, exposed to open water on multiple sides, and accessible only by boat. Search and rescue teams moved quickly. Among them was the United Cajun Navy, a volunteer search and rescue organization that regularly assists in cases like this along the Gulf Coast. Vice President Brian Trasher would later confirm the organization's involvement in the search for Nolan, as crews combed the island and surrounding waters for any sign of him. For 2 days, there was nothing. Then, on July 6th, that changed. It wasn't a search team that found him. It was a National Park Service ranger, working the island independently, who discovered a body on the shoreline and called it in. Investigators responded, and what followed was the process of confirming what everyone feared, that the young man found on Horn Island was Nolan Wells. That confirmation came through his dental records. Coroner Bruce Lind verified the identification, and Nolan's family learned that the search was over, but in the worst possible way. Christine posted the confirmation publicly, letting the community know that the body recovered on Horn Island was her son. Within hours, the family retained civil rights attorney Ben Crump, a name many recognize from a string of high-profile cases involving police transparency and accountability. Crump's early statements made the family's position clear. They wanted a thorough investigation, they wanted transparency, and they wanted every piece of evidence, every witness account, and the full autopsy findings released in time. The case quickly drew national attention. Reverend Al Sharpton delivered the eulogy at Nolan's funeral and announced a $100,000 reward for information related to his death. Filmmaker and media mogul Tyler Perry covered the cost of funeral services for the family, a gesture he later spoke about publicly, drawing on his own experience of losing a family member without clear answers. Meanwhile, investigators asked the public for help. The Jackson County Sheriff's Department put out a formal appeal, requesting any photos, videos, or first-hand accounts from people who had been on Horn Island on July 4th. If you had a phone out that day, if you saw Nolan, if you saw anything unusual, they wanted to hear from you. It's worth pausing here for a second. If you're watching this and you're from the Gulf Coast, or anywhere near Mississippi, drop a comment and let us know. It helps us understand how far this story has traveled, and it helps get details like this in front of the right eyes. By the time Nolan's body was identified, the story was no longer just a missing persons case. It was now a question the entire country was asking. What actually happened to him on that island? And that's when things started going wrong. not on the island, but after. As public interest in the case grew, so did the online speculation. And in late July, a new claim surfaced, this time from someone who said she'd witnessed something firsthand. A woman posting online, using the handle Secret Service Sam, said she had been on a nearby boat on July 4th and saw an altercation involving Nolan. According to her account, the dispute started over Nolan's phone. She described hearing him yelling for it to be returned, and said the argument escalated after the group made it back to shore, turning into a physical altercation involving Nolan and several other people. She also said she saw a young woman, referred to in the exchange as Katie, trying to get everyone to stop. By her own account, she left the area before seeing how the situation resolved. She's been clear that everything beyond what she personally witnessed would be speculation, and she said she doesn't know what happened after she left. She also claimed she reached out directly to one of the young men involved, telling him she'd witnessed the argument and had video footage from her husband, taken from their boat. According to her, the footage doesn't show much, but it does capture the argument and what she described as visible frustration directed at Nolan. Naturally, this raised the obvious question: does this claim hold up, and has it actually reached investigators? The friend group's response has been consistent denial. Officer Brandon Tatum, a former police officer who has interviewed several of the young men involved, has said none of them have described any altercation resembling what's being claimed online. One of those friends, Warren Hudson, gave an on-record account stating that Nolan chose to stay behind because the group's boat was taking on water, a version of events that lines up with what friends told investigators early on. According to those close to the group, this is the first they're hearing of any altercation like the one being described. There are legitimate questions worth asking here, and they're not about tearing anyone down. Has this witness formally submitted her account and any footage to law enforcement? As of the claims going public, that hadn't been confirmed, and without that step, an online account, however detailed, remains just that, an online account. But here's what moves this from rumor into confirmed investigative territory. CNN has reported that investigators have specifically and formally requested original, unedited photos and videos from July 4th, particularly footage depicting alleged altercations, or believed to show Nolan. That's not speculation. That's Jackson County investigators, on the record, actively pursuing this exact thread as part of the case. One more name entered the story around this time: Jackson County Chancery Court Judge Ashley Cole. Her son, Warren, was on Horn Island that day and has been interviewed by the Sheriff's Department. As rumors and images involving her family circulated online, Judge Cole issued a public statement addressing the speculation directly, saying neither she nor her husband were present on the island, and expressing concern for the safety of her children after their photos were shared widely online. So where does that leave things? An unverified but detailed witness claim, a firm denial from the friend group, and confirmation from investigators that footage of an alleged altercation is something they are actively trying to obtain. If a verified version of that video ever surfaces, it could reshape this entire timeline. We'll be covering it the moment that happens, so if you want to see that update before it's mainstream news, subscribing is the way to stay ahead of it. But this isn't where everything changed. While witness accounts online kept multiplying, investigators were building their case on something more concrete: data, documents, and forensic evidence. Start with the boat. The friends who traveled with Nolan turned over GPS and Life 360 location data from their phones, which allowed investigators to reconstruct a timeline of when the boat left Horn Island and when it arrived back on the mainland. That data, paired with a group phone call some of the boys were on around the same time, has been used to establish exactly where those friends were and when. It's precise, verifiable, and it's the kind of evidence that's difficult to dispute. But not every piece of evidence in this case has been that clean. A preliminary document from the Mississippi Department of Marine Resources, sent out during the initial search effort, included witness statements indicating Nolan had been drinking heavily with friends on Horn Island that day. That detail came from an internal search bulletin, not a toxicology report, and it reflects what witnesses told searchers in the hours after Nolan went missing, not a confirmed finding. There's also been a documented discrepancy involving the boats themselves. Reports have pointed to a mismatch between the vessel searched by investigators and the actual boat associated with the group, an error in how the vessel was identified in official records. If confirmed, a mix-up like that raises real questions about what evidence, like onboard GPS data, may have been overlooked or misattributed early in the investigation. Then there's reporting from TMZ, citing sources with direct knowledge of the investigation, indicating that evidence exists showing Nolan remained on Horn Island after his friend's boat departed. This lines up with what his friends have said publicly, but it's now being treated as something investigators have independent evidence to support, not just a version of events told by the people involved. Now, to the autopsies, because there have been two. The first was conducted by the Mississippi State Medical Examiner's Office. As of the most recent reporting, that autopsy has been completed, but the findings have not been publicly released. Officials have cited state law restricting what can be disclosed during an active investigation. The second autopsy was independent, commissioned by Nolan's family, and funded by former NFL quarterback Colin Kaepernick. It was conducted on July 10th by forensic pathologist Dr. Roger A. Mitchell. His preliminary findings state that Nolan's cause and manner of death are undetermined, pending further investigation. Because of how decomposed Nolan's body was by the time of the second exam, Dr. Mitchell wasn't able to draw firm conclusions from it alone. One detail that has been confirmed is discoloration in the soft tissue at the back of Nolan's head. That kind of discoloration can result from blood pooling after death, a natural process, rather than necessarily indicating an injury sustained while he was alive. It's a finding that needs more testing before it means anything definitive either way. To put the forensic picture in context, when someone has been in a physical altercation, forensic examiners typically look for specific signs: bruising on the knuckles or forearms, marks on the face consistent with impact, or trauma to the head and body. According to available reporting so far, none of those specific indicators have been confirmed in either autopsy. As for how he died, drowning remains the leading working theory, though it hasn't been officially confirmed. Several factors matter here. Water temperature in that part of the Gulf runs warm, which speeds up decomposition. Muscle tends to sink, while body fat tends to float, which affects how and when a body resurfaces. And where a body is recovered relative to where someone was last seen can tell investigators a lot about currents, timing, and what may have happened in between. Toxicology results are still pending. There have been unconfirmed reports that no cocaine was found in Nolan's system, but that hasn't been officially verified. Blood alcohol levels, on the other hand, can still be measured even after a body has spent time in water, using blood or tissue samples, which means that answer is likely still coming. If you want to know the moment toxicology results or grand jury findings are confirmed, subscribing is how you'll see it first, before it's picked up everywhere else. And that's when the case stopped being about an accident. The district attorney overseeing this case has been public about one thing: everything gathered in this investigation will go before a grand jury. In a public statement, she said her obligation is to present the grand jury with all the evidence collected, so they can reach a decision based on a thorough investigation, complete evidence, and a full understanding of the law. She's also said that restraint in releasing information publicly isn't about withholding the truth. It's about protecting the integrity of the investigation and the grand jury process itself. That process is worth explaining, because Mississippi handles it differently than most states. Jackson County follows an older legal model, rooted in what used to be called a coroner's inquest. Instead of a medical examiner or coroner independently determining cause and manner of death, that responsibility is folded into the grand jury itself. The grand jury reviews the evidence, decides whether Nolan's death was accidental, and determines whether a crime occurred. If they find evidence of a crime, they can then return an indictment. That's an important distinction to make clearly. As of now, this has not been officially classified as a criminal investigation. What is confirmed is that the grand jury process is active, and it's this same body that will ultimately determine both how Nolan died and whether anyone should be charged in connection with his death. The Mississippi chapter of the NAACP has weighed in publicly as well, calling for a thorough and unbiased investigation. In their statement, they pointed to what they described as deeply concerning contradictions in the initial accounts, along with the reports of a prior altercation and the unanswered question of how Nolan came to be left behind on the island. They called on the Sheriff's Department and all state and federal agencies involved to pursue every lead without delay. Cases like this aren't without precedent. Nolan's death has drawn comparisons to the 2015 case of Lauren Agee, a 21-year-old from Tennessee who was found dead in Center Hill Lake after a weekend camping trip with friends. That case was ultimately ruled accidental, and no charges were ever filed, though her family spent years afterward challenging that conclusion. It's a reminder that cases involving a group of friends, a body of water, and an unclear timeline don't always end with a clean answer, even years later. As it stands right now, Nolan's official state autopsy remains sealed. No charges have been filed. No cause or manner of death has been officially determined. The investigation is still active, and the grand jury has not yet returned a decision. The $100,000 reward for information remains active, and Jackson County Sheriff's officials continue to ask anyone with knowledge relevant to Nolan's final hours to come forward directly to investigators. What's clear is that a family is still waiting for answers about how their son died. What's equally clear is that separating verified fact from online speculation has become its own part of this story. The investigation is ongoing, and until the grand jury reaches its decision, this case remains exactly what officials have called it from the beginning: unresolved. 2 days in the water. A family still waiting for one word: answers. That's where this case stands tonight. No cause of death, no charges, no closure. Just a grand jury, a sealed autopsy, and a lot of people still asking what really happened on Horn Island. If you're new here, hit subscribe and turn on notifications, because we'll bring you the next update on this case the moment it's confirmed. Drop your theories in the comments below. We read every one of them. Until then, stay safe, stay informed, and we'll see you in the next one.